Maria Santos had been working as a maid in the Whitmore mansion for 3 years, but she had never seen anything quite like this before. The sprawling estate sat on 50 acres of perfectly manicured grounds in the wealthy Hamptons, where billionaire tech mogul Richard Whitmore lived in isolation. At 62 years old, Whitmore was known for his eccentric habits and reclusive nature, rarely leaving the mansion except for the most important business meetings. Maria arrived at work every morning at 6 sharp, just as she had for the past 3 years. She was a hardworking woman from Honduras who had come to America with dreams of providing a better life for her 2 children back home. The job at the Whitmore mansion paid well enough to support her family and even save a little money for their future. She took pride in her work, ensuring every corner of the massive house sparkled with cleanliness. The mansion itself was a marvel of modern architecture mixed with classical elegance. It had 23 rooms, including 8 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms, a library that stretched 2 stories high, a wine cellar that could hold thousands of bottles, and a home office that looked more like a command center for a space mission. The walls were adorned with priceless artwork, and every piece of furniture seemed to cost more than most people made in a year. Maria had always found Mr. Whitmore to be a polite but distant employer. He rarely spoke to her beyond the occasional good morning or thank you. She knew he was brilliant. His technology company had revolutionized how people communicated across the globe, but there was something mysterious about him that she could never quite figure out. He seemed younger than his age suggested, always energetic and sharp, never showing signs of fatigue despite working long hours in his office. On this particular Tuesday morning in October, Maria noticed something different about her employer's routine. Usually, Mr. Whitmore would be in his office by 7 in the morning, already deep into his work with multiple computer screens glowing and phone calls echoing through the halls. But today, the office was empty, and she could hear movement coming from his private study on the 3rd floor, a room she was explicitly told never to enter. As Maria went about her morning cleaning routine, dusting the antique furniture in the main hallway, she couldn't help but notice the unusual sounds coming from above. There were soft mechanical whirring noises, like the sound of a small machine operating, followed by what sounded like glass clinking together. Her curiosity was piqued, but she had strict instructions about respecting Mr. Whitmore's privacy, especially regarding his personal study. Around 10 in the morning, Maria was cleaning the 2nd floor bedrooms when she heard footsteps on the stairs. She glanced out into the hallway and saw Mr. Whitmore walking toward the main staircase. What caught her attention immediately was how different he looked. His usually pale complexion had a healthy, almost glowing appearance, and his gray hair seemed to have more brown in it than she remembered. His step was lighter, more energetic than usual, almost like a man 30 years younger. She watched from the doorway as he descended the stairs, noting how he moved with an unusual spring in his step. When he reached the bottom of the staircase, he paused to look at himself in the large mirror that hung in the foyer. Maria saw him smile, not the polite, reserved smile she was used to, but a genuine expression of satisfaction, as if he was pleased with what he saw in his reflection. After Mr. Whitmore left for what appeared to be a rare trip outside the mansion, Maria continued her work, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about her employer. She had worked for him long enough to notice even subtle changes in his appearance and behavior. Today, he seemed transformed in a way she couldn't explain. As she cleaned the 3rd floor hallway, Maria found herself standing outside the door to Mr. Whitmore's private study. She had always wondered what was inside that room. The door was always locked, and she had been given specific instructions never to attempt to enter. But today, as she dusted the nearby furniture, she noticed something unusual. The door was slightly ajar. Maria looked around to make sure she was alone. Mr. Whitmore had left the mansion, and the other staff members, the cook, the gardener, and the security guard, were all in different parts of the property. She knew she shouldn't, but her curiosity got the better of her. She gently pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. What she saw made her gasp softly. The room looked like a high-tech laboratory rather than a study. There were multiple computer monitors displaying complex graphs and charts with numbers she didn't understand. Along one wall was what appeared to be a sophisticated medical cabinet filled with various bottles and vials containing liquids of different colors. Some were clear, others were blue, green, or even a strange golden color that seemed to shimmer in the light. In the center of the room was a large desk covered with scientific equipment she had never seen before. There were microscopes, small centrifuges, and what looked like a pill-making
You have to
machine.
take them now. It's
Scattered
absolutely
across the
crucial.
desk were
I don't know
notebooks
if I
filled with
can.
handwritten
You
notes
must.
and
There's no other way.
formulas that might as well have been written in a foreign language. But what really caught Maria's attention was a small glass dish sitting near one of the monitors. Inside the dish were several pills that looked unlike any medication she had ever seen. They were perfectly round and had an iridescent quality that made them appear to change color as the light hit them from different angles. Some appeared blue, then shifted to purple, then to a silvery color that almost seemed to glow. Next to the dish was an open notebook with today's date written at the top of the page. Below the date were notes written in Mr. Whitmore's precise handwriting. Maria could only make out a few words: cellular regeneration, telomere extension, and age reversal successful. The rest was filled with complex formulas and diagrams that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Maria's heart began racing as she realized what she might be looking at. Could it be possible that Mr. Whitmore was working on some kind of anti-aging medication? It would certainly explain his unusually youthful appearance for a man of 62, and why he seemed even younger and more energetic today than usual. She carefully stepped into the room, being careful not to touch anything. Along the far wall, she noticed a large bookshelf filled with medical and scientific journals, books about genetics, cellular biology, and what appeared to be research papers from major universities around the world. Some of the titles she could read included The Science of Longevity, Genetic Manipulation and Human Enhancement, and Reversing the Aging Process, Theoretical Applications. As Maria moved closer to the desk to get a better look at the strange pills, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway outside. Her heart jumped into her throat as she realized Mr. Whitmore was returning much earlier than expected. She quickly but carefully backed out of the room, making sure to leave the door in the same slightly open position she had found it. She hurried down to the second floor and resumed her cleaning, trying to calm her racing heart and process what she had just discovered. Within minutes, she heard the front door open and Mr. Whitmore's footsteps in the foyer. She listened as he climbed the stairs, his steps still carrying that unusual energy she had noticed earlier. For the rest of the day, Maria went about her work with her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen in that room. The pills, the scientific equipment, the notes about age reversal. It all seemed too incredible to believe, yet the evidence was right there in front of her eyes. As she prepared to leave at the end of her shift, Maria found herself looking at Mr. Whitmore differently. When he emerged from his study to bid her goodnight, she noticed details about his appearance that she had overlooked before. His skin was remarkably smooth for a man his age, with very few wrinkles around his eyes. His hair, which she had always assumed was colored by a skilled stylist, seemed to be naturally thick and healthy. Even his posture was that of a much younger man, straight and confident rather than the slightly stooped shoulders she might expect from someone in their 60s. "Have a good evening, Maria," Mr. Whitmore said with that S over the following weeks. Maria became increasingly observant of Mr. Whitmore's daily habits and routines. She began to notice patterns that she had previously overlooked. Every morning at exactly 9:30, he would disappear into his study for about 30 minutes. During this time, she would hear the same mechanical whirring sounds, followed by complete silence. When he emerged, he always looked refreshed and energized, as if he had just returned from a rejuvenating vacation. Maria also noticed that Mr. Whitmore's appearance seemed to be changing gradually, but consistently. His hair was definitely becoming darker, with less gray showing through each week. The lines around his eyes were becoming less pronounced, and his skin had taken on a healthy, almost youthful glow that seemed unusual for someone his age. Most remarkably, he appeared to be losing weight in all the right places while gaining muscle tone, something that typically required months of dedicated exercise and diet. Determined to learn more, Maria began paying attention to other details around the mansion. She started keeping track of deliveries to the house, noting that several times a week, packages arrived from medical supply companies and university research laboratories. The packages were always addressed directly to Mr. Whitmore and were delivered to a special entrance near his study. She never saw what was inside these packages, but they were usually small and handled with great care. One afternoon, while cleaning Mr. Whitmore's bedroom, Maria discovered something interesting in his wastebasket. Among the usual papers and tissues, she found an empty bottle that had once contained some kind of supplement. The label was partially torn, but she could make out part of the text, cellular regeneration complex, for research use only. Below that was a warning in red letters, not approved for human consumption. The discovery sent chills down Maria's spine. If Mr. Whitmore was experimenting with substances that weren't approved for human use, it meant he was taking enormous risks with his health. But looking at him every day, he appeared healthier and more vibrant than most people half his age. Whatever he was doing, it seemed to be working remarkably well. Maria's curiosity led her to start researching anti-aging science during her free time. She spent hours at the local library using their computers to look up information about longevity research, cellular regeneration, and age reversal. What she learned fascinated and frightened her in equal measure. She discovered that scientists around the world had been working for decades to understand and potentially reverse the aging process. There were researchers studying telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten as we age, and others looking into cellular repair mechanisms. Some laboratories had achieved remarkable success in extending the lifespan of laboratory animals, but human applications were still considered theoretical and highly experimental. The more Maria read, the more she realized that if Mr. Whitmore had actually achieved significant age reversal in humans, he would be sitting on one of the most valuable discoveries in human history. Such a breakthrough would be worth billions of dollars and could potentially change the entire structure of human society. But it would also attract attention from powerful people who might not have the best intentions. During her research, Maria also learned about the potential dangers of experimental age reversal treatments. Scientists had discovered that while some therapies could make subjects appear younger, they often came with serious side effects, including increased cancer risk, organ failure, and psychological changes. The fact that Mr. Whitmore seemed to be thriving despite using unapproved treatments was either a testament to his genius or an indication that he was simply lucky so far. As weeks turned into months, Maria's observations of Mr. Whitmore became more systematic. She began keeping a journal, noting his daily routine, his appearance changes, and any unusual behaviors. She recorded details about his energy levels, his eating habits, and even his sleep patterns based on what she could observe around the mansion. What she documented was remarkable. Mr. Whitmore seemed to require less sleep than before, often working late into the night, but still appearing refreshed in the morning. His appetite had changed too. He was eating smaller portions, but seemed more satisfied with his meals. Most notably, he had started taking on physical activities that would be challenging for someone his age. She often saw him doing push-ups in his home gym and noticed that he had installed new, more challenging exercise equipment. One day in November, Maria's careful observation paid off in an unexpected way. She was cleaning the library when Mr. Whitmore received a phone call that seemed to upset him greatly. She couldn't help but overhear parts of the conversation as his voice rose with frustration. "No, I told you the research isn't ready for public disclosure," she heard him say. "The safety trials need to continue for at least another year before we can even consider moving forward. I don't care how much money is involved. This isn't about profit. It's about making sure we don't hurt people." There was a long pause as the person on the other end of the call spoke. Then, Mr. Whitmore continued, his voice tense with anger. "If you try to move forward without my approval, I'll shut down the entire project. The formula is locked in my personal files, and without my cooperation, you have nothing. Yes, I understand the implications, but I won't be responsible for releasing something that could be dangerous." After the call ended, Maria heard Mr. Whitmore slam his phone down on the desk. She could hear him pacing in the library, muttering to himself. From what she had overheard, it was clear that other people knew about his research and were pressuring him to share it, possibly before he felt it was safe to do so. This revelation made Maria realize that Mr. Whitmore might be in a dangerous situation. If his anti-aging research was as valuable as she suspected, there would be people willing to go to great lengths to get their hands on it. The pressure he was feeling from whoever had called him suggested that he wasn't just dealing with eager investors, but possibly people who wouldn't take no for an answer. That evening, as Maria was preparing to leave, she noticed something unusual. There were two men in dark suits standing near the front gate of the property, apparently having a conversation with the security guard. They didn't look like typical visitors to the mansion, and something about their presence made her feel uneasy. She made a mental note to mention this to Mr. Whitmore if the opportunity arose. The next morning, Maria arrived to find the mansion's security had been upgraded overnight. There were new cameras installed around the property, and the security guard mentioned that they had hired additional personnel to patrol the grounds. When she asked if everything was all right, the guard simply said that Mr. Whitmore was taking extra precautions for his privacy. As Maria went about her morning routine, she noticed that Mr. Whitmore seemed more tense than usual. His confident demeanor had been replaced by something more guarded and watchful. He spent more time looking out windows and seemed to be listening carefully to every sound in the house. The transformation that had made him appear younger and more energetic was still evident, but now it was accompanied by an underlying tension that suggested he was worried about something. During lunch break, while Mr. Whitmore was in a business meeting in his office, Maria decided to take another risk. She had noticed that he sometimes left his study door unlocked during the day when he was working in other parts of the house. Today might be her chance to get another look at his research and try to understand exactly what he was working on. She made her way to the third floor, her heart pounding with each step. The hallway was quiet, and she could hear the muffled sound of Mr. Whitmore's voice from his office on the floor below. When she reached the study door, she was relieved to find it unlocked. She slipped inside quickly and quietly. The room looked different from her first visit. There were more charts on the walls, and the desk was covered with what appeared to be test results and data printouts. The strange, color-changing pills were nowhere to be seen, but there were several new pieces of equipment that looked even more sophisticated than what she had seen before. On the computer screen, Maria could see what appeared to be a complex molecular diagram rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. Below the diagram were numbers and calculations that meant nothing to her, but she could see that the file was labeled Formula 7C, Optimized Cellular Regeneration Protocol. Next to the computer was a thick folder labeled Test Results, Personal Trials. Maria carefully opened the folder and found page after page of medical data, blood test results, and photographs. The photographs showed Mr. Whitmore taken over what appeared to be a period of several months, and the progression was remarkable. In the earliest photos, he looked like the 62-year-old man she had first met when she started working at the mansion. But in the most recent photos, he appeared to be in his 40s, with smooth skin, thick hair, and the physique of a much younger man. The medical data in the folder was beyond her understanding, but she could see charts showing improvements in everything from muscle mass and bone density to cardiovascular health and brain function. At the bottom of one page, in Mr. Whitmore's handwriting, was a note that made her blood run cold. Subjects showing 15 to 20 years of age reversal over 6-month period. No adverse effects detected. Ready for Phase 2 human trials. The implication was clear. Mr. Whitmore wasn't just experimenting on himself. He was planning to test his age reversal treatment on other people. But who would these test subjects be? And were they aware of the experimental nature of what they would be taking? Maria's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside. Panic shot through her as she realized Mr. Whitmore's meeting had ended earlier than expected. She quickly closed the folder and headed for the door, but before she could reach it, she heard his voice just outside. "I don't care what they're offering," he was saying into his phone. "I won't be pressured into releasing an unfinished product. Yes, I understand the potential market value, but human lives are more important than profit margins." Maria found herself trapped in the study with no way out without being seen. She looked around desperately for a place to hide and spotted a large cabinet in the corner of the room. She quickly but quietly made her way over to it and squeezed herself inside just as she heard the door handle turn. From her hiding place, Maria could see through a small gap in the cabinet doors. Mr. Whitmore entered the room and went straight to his desk, still talking on his phone. His face was flushed with anger, and he seemed more agitated than she had ever seen him. "Listen to me very carefully," he said into the phone, his voice low and threatening. "If you or your associates attempt to access my research without authorization, you'll find that I've taken precautions. The formula is encrypted and backed up in multiple secure locations. Without my cooperation, you have nothing." There was another pause as the person on the discovery that Mr. Whitmore had written her name in his emergency note left Maria feeling both confused and frightened. She spent the rest of that day trying to act normal while her mind raced with questions. Why would he trust her with such important information? How did he even know her birthday? She had never given him personal details beyond what was required for employment, yet somehow he knew enough about her to include her in his most secret plans. That evening, Maria decided she needed to confront Mr. Whitmore directly. The weight of what she had discovered was becoming too much to bear alone, and the mention of her name in his note suggested that he might already know she had been investigating his work. She resolved to speak with him the next morning, hoping that honesty might be the best approach to a situation that was becoming increasingly complicated and dangerous. The next day, Maria arrived at work with a mixture of nervousness and determination. She went through her morning routine, but her attention was constantly focused on Mr. Whitmore's activities. She noticed that he seemed more paranoid than ever, frequently checking the windows and spending long periods of time on encrypted phone calls in his office. Around 10 in the morning, Maria gathered her courage and knocked on the door to Mr. Whitmore's office. When he called for her to enter, she found him sitting behind his large mahogany desk, looking younger than ever but with worry lines creasing his forehead. "Mr. Whitmore," Maria began, her voice slightly shaky, "I need to talk to you about something important." He looked up from his computer and studied her face carefully. There was something in his expression that suggested he had been expecting this conversation. "Please, have a seat, Maria. I think I know what this might be about." Maria sat down in one of the leather chairs across from his desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Sir, I accidentally saw inside your study a few weeks ago. The door was open, and I saw the equipment and the pills. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't help being curious." Mr. Whitmore leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment, studying her with sharp, intelligent eyes. Finally, he spoke. "How much did you see? And, more importantly, have you told anyone about what you observed?" "I haven't told anyone," Maria said quickly. "But I saw enough to know that you're working on something related to aging. And yesterday, I overheard some of your phone conversations. It sounds like other people are trying to pressure you about your research." A small smile played at the corners of Mr. Whitmore's mouth. "You're very observant, Maria. More observant than I gave you credit for. In fact, I've been monitoring the security cameras, and I know you've been investigating my work for quite some time." Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and fear. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore. I know I violated your privacy, and I understand if you want to fire me. I was so curious about what you were doing, especially when I noticed how different you looked." "Fire you?" Mr. Whitmore laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "Maria, you're probably the only person in this house I can trust right now. In fact, I've been hoping you would approach me about this." This response surprised Maria completely. She had expected anger, dismissal, or worse. "You wanted me to find out about your research?" Mr. Whitmore stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds where the new security guards were patrolling. "Maria, what I'm about to tell you could put you in danger, but I believe you have a right to know, especially since you've already discovered so much on your own." He turned back to face her, his expression serious and intense. 3 years ago, I made a breakthrough in cellular regeneration research that has the potential to reverse human aging by decades. What you've observed in my appearance is the result of my own testing of the treatment. In 6 months, I've effectively reversed about 20 years of aging. Maria felt her breath catch in her throat. Hearing him confirm her suspicions made the reality of the situation hit home. "That's incredible, but also terrifying. Are there side effects?" "So far, none that I can detect," Mr. Whitmore replied. "My health markers have improved across the board. I feel better than I did when I was 40. But the treatment is still experimental, and I'm the only human test subject. I need at least another year of data before I can be confident about its long-term safety. But other people want you to share it now? Maria asked, remembering the angry phone call she had overheard. Mr. Whitmore's expression darkened. Yes, my research partners and investors are putting tremendous pressure on me to begin human trials and move toward commercial production. They see the potential profit. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. But I won't release something that could harm people just to make money. Maria began to understand the gravity of the situation Mr. Whitmore was facing. Is that why you've increased security around the mansion? Partly, he admitted. There are people who would be willing to steal my research if they can't convince me to share it willingly. The formula and all my data are stored in highly encrypted files, but there are other ways to pressure someone. The implications sent a chill down Maria's spine. They would threaten you? They already have, Mr. Whitmore said grimly. And they've made it clear that the threats extend to people close to me. That's why I've been keeping track of your investigation, Maria. I needed to know whether you could be trusted, because I may need your help. Maria felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was hearing. My help? I'm just a housekeeper. What could I possibly do to help with something like this? Mr. Whitmore returned to his desk and opened a locked drawer, pulling out a small device that looked like a sophisticated USB drive. This contains a complete backup of all my research, the formula, the test results, everything. If something happens to me, someone needs to make sure this information gets to the right people, not the wrong ones. He held the device out to Maria. I've arranged for a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown. The access is set up under your name and birthday. If anything happens to me, you'll need to take this drive to Dr. Sarah Chun at Stanford University. She's a geneticist I trust who can continue the research responsibly. Maria stared at the device, afraid to take it. Mr. Whitmore, I don't understand why you're trusting me with something so important. You barely know me. On the contrary, he said with a slight smile, I know quite a bit about you. I had you thoroughly investigated before I hired you, and I've observed you carefully over the past 3 years. You're honest, intelligent, and, most importantly, you have a moral compass that guides your decisions. That's more than I can say for most of the people in my professional circle. Maria reluctantly took the device, feeling its weight in her hand. It was small and ordinary-looking, but she knew it contained information that could change the world. What exactly are you expecting to happen? I hope nothing, Mr. Whitmore replied. But the pressure from my investors is increasing, and they've made it clear that they're running out of patience. They want me to begin human trials within the next month, regardless of my concerns about safety. When I refuse, they may decide to take more drastic action. As if summoned by their conversation, Mr. Whitmore's phone began ringing. He glanced at the caller ID, and his face grew tense. It's them again, he said, then answered the call. Whitmore here. Even from across the desk, Maria could hear the angry voice on the other end of the line. Mr. Whitmore listened for a moment, then responded firmly. I've told you repeatedly that the answer is no. I won't compromise on safety protocols, and I won't be intimidated into changing my position. The voice on the phone grew louder and more aggressive. Mr. Whitmore held the phone away from his ear, allowing Maria to hear fragments of the conversation. Millions in investment, public obligation, legal action, if necessary. Let me make something clear, Mr. Whitmore said, his voice cold and controlled. Any attempt to force my hand will result in the complete destruction of all research data. I've built safeguards into the system that will activate if I'm threatened or coerced. You'll get nothing. After ending the call, Mr. Whitmore looked at Maria with a grim expression. That was Dr. Vincent Morrison, the head of the investment group backing my research. He's not the kind of man who accepts no for an answer. Maria felt a growing sense of unease. What kind of person are we dealing with? Morrison owns a pharmaceutical company worth billions, and he's known for his ruthless business practices, Mr. Whitmore explained. He's been involved in several scandals related to rushing drugs to market before proper safety testing. The opportunity to control an age reversal treatment would be worth more to him than anything else in the world. And he's threatening you? He's been escalating the pressure for weeks. First it was legal threats, then financial pressure. Now he's suggesting that accidents can happen to people who don't cooperate with reasonable business partners. Maria realized that she had stumbled into a situation far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Mr. Whitmore, maybe you should go to the police or the FBI or someone who can protect you. Mr. Whitmore shook his head. Morrison has connections everywhere, in law enforcement, in government, in the judicial system. Going to the authorities might just give him advance warning of my plans. For now, the best protection I have is keeping my research secret and having backup plans in place. Like trusting me with your research data, Maria said, still struggling to accept the responsibility he was placing on her. Exactly. You're the one person Morrison doesn't know about, someone outside his sphere of influence who can act independently if necessary. Maria looked down at the device in her hands, feeling the enormous weight of responsibility it represented. Mr. Whitmore, I'm scared. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I understand your fear, he said gently. But sometimes ordinary people are called upon to do extraordinary things. I believe you have the strength and integrity to handle this responsibility if it becomes necessary. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the office door. The head of security entered, looking concerned. Mr. Whitmore, we have a situation. There are 3 men at the front gate claiming to be from the FDA, but their credentials don't check out. They're demanding entry to inspect your research facilities. Mr. Whitmore and Maria exchanged a meaningful look. It's starting, he said quietly. Then, to the security guard, deny them entry and contact our legal team immediately. Also, activate the enhanced security protocols we discussed. After the security guard left, Mr. Whitmore turned back to Maria. I want you to go home early today and take the weekend off. Keep that device somewhere safe and don't tell anyone about our conversation. Maria stood up, still clutching the USB drive. What about you? Will you be safe? I have precautions in place, he assured her. But if anything does happen, remember what I told you about Dr. Chen at Stanford. She's the only person I trust to continue this work responsibly. As Maria prepared to leave, Mr. Whitmore added one more thing. Maria, I want you to know that regardless of what happens, your family will be taken care of. I've set up a trust fund that will ensure your children can attend university and that you'll have security for the rest of your life. Maria spent the weekend in a state of constant anxiety, jumping at every unexpected sound and checking her phone repeatedly for any news from Mr. Whitmore. She had hidden the USB drive in a small safe she kept in her bedroom closet, but she couldn't stop thinking about the responsibility she now carried. Every time she looked at the device, she was reminded that she held information that could revolutionize human life or become a source of unimaginable exploitation if it fell into the wrong hands. On Sunday evening, Maria received a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Whitmore will not be needing your services tomorrow. Do not attempt to contact the mansion. The message sent chills down her spine. Something had happened, and the formal, cold tone suggested it hadn't come from Mr. Whitmore himself. Despite the warning, Maria drove to the mansion early Monday morning. As she approached the property, she noticed immediately that something was wrong. The usual security guards were gone, replaced by men in dark suits who looked more like corporate security than the friendly guards she was used to. The gates were closed, and when she tried to buzz the intercom, no one responded. Maria parked across the street and watched the mansion for over an hour. She saw several expensive cars coming and going, and men in business suits carrying briefcases and equipment into the house. None of them were people she recognized, and there was no sign of Mr. Whitmore anywhere. Fighting down her growing panic, Maria drove to a nearby coffee shop and used their Wi-Fi to search for news about Mr. Whitmore or his company. What she found confirmed her worst fears. A brief news item reported that billionaire technology entrepreneur Richard Whitmore had suffered a sudden cardiac event and was currently hospitalized in critical condition. The report mentioned that his company's board of directors had assumed temporary control of his assets and research projects during his incapacitation. Maria's hands shook as she read the article. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental. Mr. Whitmore had been in perfect health, better than perfect, thanks to his age reversal treatment. A sudden cardiac event seemed impossible unless it had been induced deliberately. Remembering Mr. Whitmore's instructions about Dr. Sarah Chun at Stanford University, Maria decided she needed to act quickly. If Mr. Whitmore had been neutralized somehow, it might only be a matter of time before his adversaries discovered her connection to him. And came looking for the research data he had entrusted to her. That afternoon, Maria called in sick to work and drove to the First National Bank downtown. Her heart pounded as she approached the customer service desk and asked about access to safety deposit box 447. The bank employee checked her identification and confirmed that she was listed as the authorized user. Within minutes, she was being led to the vault area. The safety deposit box was larger than she had expected, and when she opened it, she found much more than just backup storage space. Inside were stacks of documents, including legal papers that appeared to transfer ownership of Mr. Whitmore's patents and research to a trust fund managed by Dr. Chun. There were also detailed instructions for Maria, written in Mr. Whitmore's careful handwriting. The instructions were both comprehensive and terrifying. Mr. Whitmore had anticipated that he might be incapacitated or killed, and he had prepared detailed contingency plans. According to his notes, Maria was to contact Dr. Chun immediately and arrange to transfer all the research data to her. The documents in the box would legally protect Dr. Chin's right to continue the research independently of any claims from Mr. Whitmore's former business partners. But the most shocking discovery in the safety deposit box was a thick envelope marked for Maria's protection. Inside, she found a complete dossier on Dr. Vincent Morrison and his business associates, including evidence of illegal activities ranging from bribery to intimidation to what appeared to be several suspicious deaths of business rivals. Mr. Whitmore had obviously been preparing for a confrontation with Morrison for months, gathering ammunition to protect himself and his research. Among the documents was a letter addressed to Maria personally. In it, Mr. Whitmore explained that he had hoped never to involve her in his dangerous situation, but that he had chosen her as his backup plan because she represented everything that was right about humanity, honesty, compassion, and moral courage. He wrote that he trusted her to make decisions about his research based on what would benefit humanity rather than what would generate profit. The letter went on to explain that Morrison's pharmaceutical company had a history of rushing dangerous drugs to market, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries that were later covered up through legal settlements and media manipulation. Mr. Whitmore's research represented a potential goldmine for Morrison, but in his hands, it could become a tool for exploitation rather than healing. As Maria read through the documents, she began to understand the full scope of what Mr. Whitmore had been fighting against. Morrison wasn't just a greedy businessman. He was someone who had repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice human lives for profit. If he gained control of the age reversal technology, it would likely be marketed as an expensive treatment available only to the wealthy, while any dangerous side effects would be hidden or downplayed until it was too late. Armed with this new understanding, Maria left the bank and drove straight to Stanford University. The drive took several hours, during which she constantly checked her rearview mirror for signs that she was being followed. Every dark sedan behind her seemed suspicious, and she found herself taking random detours and making unexpected turns to ensure she wasn't being tracked. Stanford University's campus was sprawling and confusing, but Maria eventually found the genetics department where Dr. Chun worked. When she arrived at the professor's office, she was relieved to find Dr. Chun was both present and willing to see her, especially after Maria mentioned Mr. Whitmore's name. Dr. Sarah Chun was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an immediately trustworthy demeanor. When Maria explained why she had come, Dr. Chin's expression grew serious and concerned. "I've been worried about Richard ever since I heard about his hospitalization," she said. "The timing seemed very suspicious, given what he told me about the pressure he was facing." "You knew about his situation?" Maria asked, surprised. "Richard contacted me several months ago about his research breakthrough," Dr. Chin explained. "He wanted my advice on how to proceed safely and ethically. I've been serving as an informal consultant on his project, reviewing his test results and helping him develop proper safety protocols." Maria felt a surge of relief at finding someone who understood the scientific and ethical implications of Mr. Whitmore's work. She handed over the USB drive and the legal documents from the safety deposit box, explaining everything that had happened over the past few weeks. Dr. Chun examined the documents carefully, her expression growing more concerned with each page. "This is worse than Richard feared," she said finally. Morrison's company has a terrible reputation in the pharmaceutical industry, but I didn't realize the extent of their illegal activities. What happens now? Maria asked. First, we need to ensure Richard's research is protected from exploitation, Dr. Chen replied. According to these documents, I now have legal custody of his work, which means Morrison's company can't simply seize it. But that also makes me a target for the same people who presumably eliminated Richard. The casual way Dr. Chen referred to Mr. Whitmore being eliminated sent another chill down Maria's spine. Do you really think they killed him? A healthy man in his apparent condition doesn't simply have a cardiac event, Dr. Chen said grimly. There are drugs that can induce heart attacks that are virtually undetectable in standard autopsies. If Morrison was desperate enough to gain control of this research, he certainly has the resources and connections to arrange something like that. Dr. Chen turned to her computer and began examining the data on the USB drive. As she scrolled through the research files, her eyes widened with amazement. My God, she whispered. Richard actually did it. This is the most significant breakthrough in human biology since the discovery of DNA. Is it really as important as he thought it was? Maria asked. More important, Dr. Chen replied. This research could potentially extend human lifespan by centuries, eliminate most age-related diseases, and fundamentally change how we think about human mortality. But you're right to be concerned about it falling into the wrong hands. In Morrison's control, this could create a world where only the extremely wealthy have access to extended life, while everyone else remains subject to aging and death. Dr. Chen continued studying the data for over an hour, occasionally making notes or pulling up related research on her computer. Finally, she turned back to Maria with a determined expression. I'm going to need your help with this, Maria. Richard trusted you for a reason, and I think we're going to need that trust more than ever. What do you mean? Maria asked, though she suspected she already knew. Morrison's people are going to figure out eventually that Richard had backup plans. When they do, they'll come looking for anyone who might have access to his research. You're probably the only person outside of this office who knows the truth about what happened, which makes you both valuable and dangerous to them. Maria felt her stomach drop. Are you saying they'll come after me? Almost certainly, Dr. Chen confirmed. But I have an idea that might protect you and help us ensure this research is used responsibly. Richard mentioned in his notes that you have family in Honduras. How would you feel about taking an extended vacation there while we figure out how to handle this situation? The suggestion made sense from a safety perspective, but Maria felt torn. I can't just abandon Mr. Whitmore after everything he trusted me with. You wouldn't be abandoning him, Dr. Chen assured her. You'd be protecting his legacy by staying alive and safe while I work to expose Morrison's crimes and establish proper oversight for the research. As they talked, Dr. Chen's computer chimed with an incoming email. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. It's from the hospital where Richard is being treated. They're saying his condition has deteriorated and that he's not expected to survive the night. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes 3 days after her meeting with Dr. Chen. Maria received news that confirmed her worst fears. Richard Whitmore had died in the hospital, officially from complications related to his cardiac event. The news reports portrayed his death as a tragic loss to the technology industry, with colleagues and business partners expressing their condolences and their commitment to continuing his important work. Maria knew the truth was far different from the public narrative. She was staying in a small motel outside of San Francisco, using cash that Dr. Chen had provided while they finalized arrangements for her to travel to Honduras. Dr. Chen had been working around the clock to analyze Mr. Whitmore's research data and to gather evidence against Dr. Morrison and his associates. On Thursday morning, Dr. Chen called with an update that was both encouraging and terrifying. I've been in contact with several federal agencies about Morrison's activities, she reported. The FBI is very interested in the evidence Richard compiled, particularly the documents showing Morrison's involvement in previous cover-ups of dangerous drug side effects. Does that mean we'll be safe from him? Maria asked hopefully. Eventually, but not immediately, Dr. Chen replied. Federal investigations move slowly, and Morrison has lawyers and connections that will help him delay any formal charges. In the meantime, he's still actively searching for Richard's research data. Dr. Chin went on to explain that Morrison's people had thoroughly searched the Whitmore mansion and found nothing. They had also been investigating Mr. Whitmore's financial records and personal relationships, looking for anyone who might have access to his research. It's only a matter of time before they identify you as a person of interest, she warned. How much time do we have? Maria asked. Maybe a few days, maybe less. I think we need to accelerate our plans to get you out of the country. That afternoon, Dr. Chin arrived at Maria's motel with plane tickets to Honduras and a detailed plan for ensuring her safety. But she also brought news that changed everything about their strategy. I've been analyzing Richard's research data more thoroughly, Dr. Chin explained, and I've discovered something remarkable. He didn't just develop a treatment that reverses aging. He also built in safeguards that prevent the formula from being replicated without specific genetic markers. Maria didn't understand the scientific details, but she could see the excitement in Dr. Chin's eyes. What does that mean? It means the treatment is essentially useless to anyone who doesn't have Richard's specific DNA, Dr. Chin continued. He engineered the formula to be compatible only with his own genetic makeup. Even if Morrison gets hold of the research data, he won't be able to manufacture the treatment for anyone else. This revelation changed the entire dynamic of their situation. So Morrison can't profit from the research even if he steals it? Not without Richard's biological samples, and not without understanding how to modify the formula for different genetic profiles. That part of the research was kept separately, and, according to these notes, it was stored in a different location entirely. Dr. Chin showed Maria a section of Mr. Whitmore's research notes that detailed his paranoid but prescient security measures. He had anticipated that someone might try to steal his work, so he had deliberately made the formula incomplete without access to additional data that was stored in a separate, highly secure location. Where's the rest of the research? Maria asked. According to this, it's in a private laboratory in Switzerland, accessible only with biometric data and security codes that died with Richard. But there's another way to access it. Dr. Chin pulled out a document that Maria recognized as one of the papers from the safety deposit box. Richard included you in his security protocols, Maria. Your fingerprints and retinal scan are registered as backup access to the Swiss facility. Maria felt overwhelmed by this revelation. He really thought of everything, didn't he? Richard was brilliant, but he was also deeply paranoid about protecting his work from exploitation. It turns out his paranoia was completely justified. Dr. Chun explained that they now had two choices. They could proceed with the original plan to get Maria to safety in Honduras, while Dr. Chun worked with federal authorities to build a case against Morrison. Or they could take a more aggressive approach and travel to Switzerland to retrieve the complete research data, ensuring it could never be used for exploitation. What would happen if we got the data from Switzerland? Maria asked. We could complete Richard's work and ensure the treatment is developed safely and made available to everyone, not just the wealthy, Dr. Chin replied. But it would also put us in even greater danger from Morrison and his associates. Maria thought about Mr. Whitmore's trust in her, about his hopes that his discovery could benefit all of humanity rather than becoming a tool for exploitation. She thought about her own family, about growing old and sick, about all the people in the world who could benefit from a treatment that could extend healthy human life. I want to go to Switzerland, she said finally. Dr. Chin looked surprised. Maria, I have to be honest with you about the risks. If Morrison figures out what we're doing, he has the resources to stop us permanently. We're talking about taking on someone who has already committed murder to get his hands on this research. Mr. Whitmore trusted me with this responsibility, Maria replied. I can't just run away and hope someone else will do the right thing. If there's a chance to make sure his discovery helps people instead of hurting them, I have to try. Dr. Chin studied Maria's face for a long moment, then nodded with what appeared to be admiration. Richard chose well when he decided to trust you. All right, we'll go to Switzerland. But we need to be very careful about how we do this. Over the next 2 days, Dr. Chun and Maria planned their trip with meticulous attention to security. They would travel separately, using different airlines and routes, and meet at the research facility in Geneva. Dr. Chin used her academic connections to arrange legitimate cover for their visit, presenting their trip as a consultation on genetic research safety protocols. Meanwhile, Maria learned that Morrison's investigation into Mr. Whitmore's associates was intensifying. Dr. Chin's contacts in law enforcement reported that Morrison's people had been asking questions about the mansion's staff, including specific inquiries about a Hispanic woman who had worked closely with Mr. Whitmore. It was clear that they were closing in on identifying Maria as a person of interest. On Saturday morning, Maria boarded a flight to Amsterdam, where she would catch a connecting flight to Geneva. As her plane lifted off from San Francisco International Airport, she felt a mixture of terror and determination. She was leaving behind the only life she had known in America, carrying with her the hope that Mr. Whitmore's incredible discovery could be protected and used for the benefit of all humanity. The flight to Amsterdam was long and nerve-wracking. Maria constantly watched the other passengers, wondering if any of them might be working for Morrison. Every time someone looked in her direction or got up to use the restroom, she felt a surge of paranoia. But the flight passed without incident, and she successfully made her connection to Geneva. Dr. Chin was waiting for her at the Geneva airport, looking tired but determined. They took a taxi to a small hotel near the research facility, where they spent the evening reviewing the security protocols and access procedures for the laboratory. The facility is owned by a private foundation that specializes in secure storage of sensitive research data, Dr. Chin explained. Richard paid them a substantial sum to maintain his laboratory space and ensure its security. According to the contract, only he and his designated backup could access the facility. The next morning, Maria and Dr. Chin arrived at the research facility. The security was impressive but not obvious. Cameras and sensors were discreetly integrated into the architecture, and the staff was clearly well-trained in protecting their clients' privacy. After presenting their identification and credentials, Maria and Dr. Chun were escorted to a high-security elevator that required both a key card and biometric verification. Maria placed her hand on a scanner and looked into a retinal recognition device, her heart pounding as she waited to see if Mr. Whitmore's security preparations would work. The scanner beeped softly, and a green light indicated that her identity had been verified. The elevator doors opened, and they were taken to the third floor, where Mr. Whitmore's private laboratory was located. The laboratory was even more sophisticated than his study at the mansion had been. It contained equipment worth millions of dollars, including genetic sequencing machines, advanced computer systems, and what appeared to be a complete pharmaceutical manufacturing setup. But, most importantly, it contained the missing pieces of Mr. Whitmore's research, the genetic modification protocols that would allow his age reversal treatment to be adapted for different individuals. Dr. Chin immediately began downloading data from the laboratory's computer systems while Maria explored the facility. In a secure refrigeration unit, she found dozens of vials containing various formulations of the age reversal treatment, each labeled with complex codes that presumably corresponded to different genetic profiles. "This is incredible," Dr. Chin called out from the computer terminal. Richard didn't just develop a treatment for himself. He developed a complete system for creating personalized age reversal therapies based on individual genetic analysis. This could work for anyone with the right modifications. As they worked to copy the research data, Maria felt a sense of awe at what Mr. Whitmore had accomplished. He hadn't just made a scientific breakthrough. He had created a complete, ethical framework for ensuring his discovery could benefit everyone rather than just the wealthy and powerful. But their sense of triumph was interrupted by an urgent call from Dr. Chen's contact at Stanford. "You need to get out of there immediately," the voice said over the speakerphone. "Morrison's people have tracked your travel, and they know where you are. Swiss authorities have been contacted about a supposed theft of proprietary research data." Dr. Chun and Maria looked at each other with growing alarm. They had successfully retrieved the complete research data, but now they had to escape Switzerland before Morrison's people could stop them or have them arrested on false charges. "How much time do we have?" Dr. Chen asked. "Maybe an hour, possibly less. Morrison has connections in Swiss law enforcement, and he's claiming that you've stolen billions of dollars worth of research from his company." Dr. Chin quickly finished downloading the data and copying it to multiple storage devices. She handed one to Maria and kept two for herself. "We need to separate again," she said. If one of us gets caught, the other might still escape with the data. Maria felt scared but determined. What's our plan? There's a private airfield about 20 minutes from here. I have a contact who can arrange transportation out of the country, but we'll need to move fast. As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Maria took one last look around the facility where Mr. Whitmore had created his miraculous discovery. She thought about his hope that his work would benefit all of humanity, and she felt the weight of responsibility for ensuring that hope became reality. The escape from Switzerland was harrowing, but successful. Dr. Chin's contact at the airfield was able to arrange immediate departure on a private jet, and they were airborne before Morrison's people could track them down. During the flight, Dr. Chin used encrypted communication to contact journalists and government officials, beginning the process of exposing Morrison's crimes and ensuring the age reversal research would be developed through proper, ethical channels. 6 months later, Maria was back in the United States, no longer working as a housekeeper, but serving as a liaison between Dr. Chin's research team and the international committee that had been established to oversee the development of age reversal therapies. Mr. Whitmore's research had been published openly, ensuring that no single company or individual could monopolize the benefits of his discovery. Dr. Morrison had been arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including conspiracy to commit murder in connection with Mr. Whitmore's death. The evidence that Mr. Whitmore had compiled, combined with testimony from Maria and Dr. Chun, had been enough to build a strong case against him and his associates. Most importantly, Mr. Whitmore's vision was becoming reality. Age reversal treatments were being developed through an international consortium of researchers, with the goal of making them available globally at reasonable cost. Early trials were showing remarkable success, and within a few years, the treatments that had made Mr. Whitmore appear decades younger would be available to everyone, regardless of their economic status. As Maria looked back on the extraordinary events that had changed her life, she felt grateful for Mr. Whitmore's trust in her and proud of the role she had played in protecting his legacy. She had gone from being a quiet housekeeper to being a guardian of one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history, and she had helped ensure that the secret of eternal youth would benefit all of humanity rather than just the wealthy and powerful. Maria, I think we need to get you somewhere safe tonight. Tomorrow, we can make arrangements for you to travel to Honduras while I work on exposing Morrison's activities to the proper authorities. As evening approached, Maria realized that her life had completely changed in the space of a few days. She had gone from being a quiet housekeeper to being a key player in a life and death struggle over one of the most important scientific discoveries in human history. Mr. Whitmore's trust in her had been both an honor and a burden, and now she faced the challenge of living up to that trust while protecting herself and ensuring his research would be used to help rather than exploit humanity. That night, as she prepared to go into hiding, Maria thought about Mr. Whitmore and the incredible discovery he had made. She hoped that somehow, his vision of using the research to benefit all of humanity rather than enriching a few wealthy individuals would eventually come to pass. But first, she and Dr. Chun would have to survive the immediate danger posed by Morrison and his associates, who would stop at nothing to control the secret of eternal youth. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, he replied. You've become more than just an employee, Maria. You're the closest thing I have to a friend in this world, and I wanted to make sure you knew how much I appreciate your loyalty and discretion. As Maria left the mansion that afternoon, she couldn't shake the feeling that she might never see Mr. Whitmore again. The men at the gate had left, but she noticed several unfamiliar vehicles parked along the road near the property. The sense of danger in the air was palpable, and she feared that whatever confrontation was brewing between Mr. Whitmore and his adversaries was about to come to a head. That evening, as Maria sat in her small apartment holding the device containing the most valuable scientific information in the world, she realized that her quiet life as a housekeeper was over. Whether she was ready or not, she had become a key player in a dangerous game where the stakes were nothing less than the future of human aging and the vast fortunes that would be made from controlling such a discovery. She spent the night awake, listening to every sound outside her window and wondering if she was being watched. The device seemed to pulse with importance in her hands, a tiny piece of technology that contained the power to change everything. As dawn approached, Maria knew that whatever was going to happen, her life would never be the same again. Other end responded. Then, Mr. Whitmore continued, I don't think you understand the situation. What I've developed here could change the world, but it could also destroy it if it falls into the wrong hands. I won't allow that to happen, no matter what threats you make. As Maria listened to this conversation, she began to understand that Mr. Whitmore was facing pressure from people who wanted to profit from his discovery, regardless of the potential consequences. It seemed that he was trying to protect his research from being exploited before it was safe and ready for public use. After ending the call, Mr. Whitmore sat heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. For the first time since Maria had known him, he looked vulnerable and tired, despite his youthful appearance. She could see the weight of responsibility he was carrying, and she felt a surge of sympathy for him. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Whitmore left the room to take another call downstairs. Maria waited several more minutes to make sure he was gone before emerging from her hiding place. As she prepared to leave the study, she noticed something on the desk that hadn't been there before, a handwritten note that appeared to be a draft of a letter. The note read, If anything happens to me, the complete research data can be found in Safety Deposit Box 447 at First National Bank. The access code is Maria's birthday. Maria's heart stopped as she read her own name in the note. How did Mr. Whitmore know her birthday? And why would he include her in his emergency plans? The implications were staggering and terrifying. Somehow, she had become connected to this incredible and dangerous secret, and she had no idea what that might mean for her future. A satisfied smile she had noticed earlier. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. You have a good evening, too, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. As Maria drove home to her small apartment in town, she couldn't shake the image of those strange, color-changing pills from her mind. If what she suspected was true, if Mr. Whitmore had somehow discovered the secret to reversing aging, it would be the most incredible scientific breakthrough in human history. But it also raised troubling questions. Why was he keeping it secret? Why was he experimenting on himself? And, most importantly, what would happen if the wrong people found out about his discovery? That night, as Maria lay in bed, she found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. She thought about her own life, about getting older, about the lines that were starting to appear on her face, and the aches in her joints after long days of cleaning. She thought about her children back home, about her aging parents, about all the people in the world who struggled with illness, and the inevitable decline that came with growing older. If Mr. Whitmore really had discovered a way to reverse aging, could it help everyone, or would it be something only the wealthy could afford? The question swirled in her mind as she finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that her discovery would soon change everything about her quiet life working in the mansion. The next morning, Maria arrived at work with a new sense of purpose. She needed to know more about what Mr. Whitmore was doing in that room. She needed to understand whether her suspicions were correct, and, if they were, she needed to figure out what to do with the information. Little did she know that her curiosity would soon lead her into a world of scientific wonder and danger that she never could have imagined. As she began her morning routine, Maria noticed that the door to Mr. Whitmore's study was now firmly closed and presumably locked. But she had seen enough to know that something extraordinary was happening in the mansion, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter what the consequences might be.